Do you guys ever feel like no matter how much you try to save, you end up having more money leaving your bank account anyways? Although you may reduce spending, something always comes up. You may have to spend your money to fix your car, and the fact that rent and utility always goes up. Does this sound familiar at all? Well, luckily, there are straightforward ways to save money, and today I'll be discussing the ways that have helped me save $15,000 in the past 3 months. If you're new to the channel, my name is Austin, and here we talk about personal finance, lifestyle, and investment on the road to financial freedom. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. First, I want to talk about the importance of setting up a goal and listing down your budget. If you don't have a goal, then it is very easy to lose track and quitting your saving strategy in just a week. It's important to understand what your budget and your past expenses are. Categorize them and understand how much you have spent for each. For example, how much you have spent for utilities, groceries, rent, debt, entertainment, etc. By understanding your past expense behavior, then you can set a more realistic goal so that you can achieve in the short term and long term. It's almost the same as building a health habit. You don't just become a track athlete from a couch potato in just a month. You have to slowly build up your saving habits, and then you can tweak and adjust along the way. Next, I want to talk about the 50-30-20 rule. I mentioned this in my previous video, so I want to elaborate a little bit more of paying yourself first. Previously, I think about how much I want to save, but I usually end up thinking about how much I need to spend. Now, my first mindset is thinking about paying for my future self. And what I mean by that, for example, is for every paycheck, I'll allocate a portion of it directly into my savings or investment. Not only does this help me and forces me to save, it changes my behavior, so I would alter it to spend with what I actually have to spend with. Interestingly enough, one study has shown that people with higher income does not necessarily mean that they save more. 70% of their income on average for every person goes into their expenses. So by directly putting my money into my savings, I change my lifestyle and behavior to adjust for a lower living expense. People often ask me, how do you know how much to put into savings? And what if I put too much into savings and end up needing more for my expenses? Well, this is where understanding your past expenses comes into play. And you can apply the 50-30-20 rule, where 20% is the savings, 30% is your wants, and 50% is your necessities. This rule is so easy to apply. All you have to understand is the difference between wants and needs. And no, HBO, Netflix, Starbucks does not count towards necessities. If this rule is too difficult, you can try with 65-25-10% rule, where 10% is your savings. If you're like most people, such as myself, you may be quite shocked to find out how much you have spent for groceries at the end of every month. And groceries could account for majority of the spending for simple reasons. How many times have you went down the aisle and then you were tempted to grab a fresh bag of chips or extra box of beer? These may be little expenses, but it could easily blow up your grocery expenses at the end of the month. So what you can do, I suggest, is to plan out your meals for the week. Look into your grocery storage before you actually go to the grocery store so you don't overbuy. Maybe it's a good idea to also leave your kids at home, right? And try online grocery shopping and pickup. Online grocery shopping could be great because it will reduce your temptations for extra spending when you take a whiff of those freshly baked muffins. Okay, hear this. On average, each household spends about $300 on food per month outside of home. Know that you can actually save quite a bit of money if you just pack lunch instead of buying out all the time. And again, do those budget listing of yours. It's not a bad idea to treat yourself for dinner once in a while, but know that you can buy a solid week's of groceries with just 2 meals outside. Chances are that you're probably subscribed to multiple memberships. So for example, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, gym memberships, or maybe some other subscription boxes. Whatever it is, now is a great time to start thinking canceling ones that you don't use on the regular. And no, going to the gym once a week does not justify for paying it. And if you don't know which one to cancel, try canceling it for 2 to 4 weeks. If you don't feel any difference at all, then it's a great idea that you canceled it in the first place. There are multiple membership that we realize we don't actually use, let alone when we have multiple ones for the same category. So there are also smarter ways to share the membership. For example, most of these entertainment memberships have family packages where you can share multiple screens for just a slight price upgrade. Next, I want to talk about buying generic brands. In most cases, generic brands and branded product, the only difference is that generic brands do not have as much marketing. And this applies widely to over-the-counter medicine or maybe grocery food brands. I worked in a pharmaceutical company before, and I can tell you 500 milligrams of the same medicinal ingredient is the same whether if you have a brand or not. Also, unless if you can taste the difference between a generic grocery brand, which in this case I applaud you for your superhuman taste buds, I would just suggest going for the generic grocery brand because you'll be saving 20 to 30% of the food cost. Next, I want to talk about rental costs. Rental cost accounts for a significant portion of your expenses in the needs column, and it is very often that it's very hard to minimize. However, there are a few ways. For example, if you don't want to live with your mom's basement, you can consider getting a roommate outside, and that will usually reduce your rental immediately by 50%. If you have a significant other and you're not afraid of commitment, then perhaps it's the time to talk about the future. Usually, living together comes with multiple advantages, and one of them is the fact that it's reduced rental cost. Lastly, I want to talk about energy consumption. Energy consumption is one of those things that's there, but most people do not look deeper into. But it could still account for a majority of your utility expenses. So look into it. It's quite easy to find out what's the average energy consumption in your area, and you can compare it to yours. And saving energy is great. It comes with advantages of more sustainability and saving, so why not? If you own your own home, consider changing your lights into LED. Otherwise, you can think about maybe taking shorter showers. Okay, I don't mean not taking any showers at all, okay? And maybe think about unplugging your unused electronics. Unused electronics could still account for 10% of an average household's electricity consumption. If you're in a place that uses air conditioning, remember to turn that off when you're not using it. It could easily account for a really big portion of your electricity use. Also, I want to talk about transportation. Transportation is one of those things that if you live in urban areas, think about if you need it or not, especially if you work remotely or you're living in an area with good transportation already. With how insane the oil prices are, it really doesn't justify that you're paying for such a large expense, and on a monthly basis you may be spending $200, $300 on just gas alone. So you can also consider buying electronic vehicles, EVs. In most places, government do have subsidies for buying those vehicles. And you could easily save up that $200, $300. Maybe on a yearly basis, you might be only using maybe $100 in total. However, I still don't think it's justifiable to buy those large expenses, especially if you're in the early stages of your life. Alright, that wraps up my tips for saving. I hope you enjoyed it. And I know some of you may not agree, so let me know in the comment section below on what you think is a good money saving tip. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Until next time.